Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Happy Thanksgiving. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are delighted that you're spending time with us today. Thank you so very, very much. We have a very special guest on today. Her name is Samarrah Clayman, and she'll be here to celebrate her heartwarming and thought-provoking story, Will Jax Be Home for Thanksgiving? Before we invite Samarrah into the studio, we want to invite you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. My daughter Alejandra has done a fantastic job redesigning and reconstructing an already pretty awesome website. And one of the new features there is our reading list. If you go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the Parents Click Here button, you can scroll down to our reading list. Now, she's assembled some really fantastic books by different themes. We have a Native American authors reading list. We also have a winter holiday reading list that is available for you. It's all right there at readingwithyourkids.com. There's so many other things there too. Of course, if you're an author, you can find out about a certified great read program. If you are looking for a very, very stylish mask to wear around the neighborhood, keeping yourself and others safe, you can check out our merch page and buy yourself your very own Reading with Your Kids face mask. Check it out today. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us on the line right now from right outside of Boston in the great state of Massachusetts. She's here to celebrate's the right word. The name of her book is Will Jax Be Home for Thanksgiving? Please welcome to the show, Samarrah Clayman. Samarrah, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited that you're on the show, and you're on the show to help us celebrate Thanksgiving. And just from the title, a lot of folks out there might be thinking, is this really a Thanksgiving book? And I'm going to explain why we chose to feature this book on this wonderful day. Why don't you tell us what Will Jax Be Home for Thanksgiving is all about?
All right. Well, first of all, Thanksgiving is about gratitude. Mm-hmm. So this book is a lot about gratitude, both gratitude for the story, which I'll explain in a little bit, and I guess the current situation, being grateful for being all together and with family now. So this book grew out of an experience. My son, when he was almost 2, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And he was pretty young, so he was just kind of going with the flow. But his older sister was 4 at the time, and I really wanted to help explain to her kind of what just happened to our family. What our whole life got flipped around, and I really was looking for resources to help normalize that and just help explain it. So I looked everywhere. I'm a social worker by training, and so because it's kind of my thing to look for resources that help. And I came up really short. I found some really depressing, black and white, drawing books that just scared me. And then I didn't find anything really addressing the situation. So I wrote this book for siblings and people like my daughter who have a sibling or family member who's sick, to help normalize it and really be able to use it as a talking tool to talk about what was going on, why everything was so different.
And I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so grateful that you're here, because one of the reasons, it's not one of the reasons, it's the reason I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast, is that I understood, now that as I look back at my family, and my kids right now are 2 amazing young adults, 23 and 27 years old. Actually, no, I think it's 24 and 28. But they're just incredible. And we have great relationships with them. Not perfect, but great. And I know that the conversations that we have now about life, about marriage, about moving, jobs. I know that those conversations started sitting on the couch talking about a picture book.
Exactly.
And it's such a I think it is the most valuable thing a family can do together, is to sit and spend that time. And even if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, I can't do this, I can't read, I'm not a strong reader, I can't read, I don't have the confidence, just pick up a book and look at the pictures and talk about them. That time spent together is so valuable. And as a social worker, as somebody who went through this experience, can you expand a little bit more on that and just talk about the value that you see in that time that we spend reading together?
Sure. Well, yeah, so reading has always been a really big part of our family. It's something that has kind of bookended our day. Like when we wake up, we read a book. When at bedtime, I've always read both of my kids' books before bed. And so it's always been just a time for us to connect and bond. And you know, books can be fun, silly, whatever, and they can also be for a lesson too. So, and you need a little bit of everything. So I think I see books as a tool to use. And I think the really important thing about books is, you know, so this book sounds heavy, brain tumor, right? But it's not really about a brain tumor. It's about the experience and being able to talk about something. And I think it's important to introduce books about kind of what you think are difficult topics before you're facing that difficult topic. Mm-hmm. Like at some point, everyone is going to have something in their life, a loss of a grandparent or someone, a friend or a relative gets sick. That's normal. That's part of life at some point. But if you look at these books before you're like really needed or in that place, you then just have that conversation. You make it normal for your kid to ask you questions. Oh, well, what happens after someone dies? Or what does it mean, you know, I don't know, pass away? Like, mm-hmm. I'm all about using very direct, literal language because kids don't understand that. So I think it's really, a book can be a tool, and, you know, your child's probably not going to engage with it when they're not ready. So they're going to engage if it's about something that they don't want to talk about. Oh, look at the pretty picture and let's talk about the yellow leaf or whatever. They'll focus on what they need to talk about. So I just think it's important to share as many stories that speak to you as a parent, and then, you know, your kid will kind of take the lead of where they want to go with it. Mm-hmm. So I try to always just, you know, our library here is wonderful. They have lists of books on different topics that could be challenging, like changing schools or, you know, when someone teases you, all things like that, or a loss in the family. And so, yeah, I always pick a few and just throw them with the rest of the books and see if anyone wants to read them. And they're very clear when they do.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. That idea of having, you know, kind of being proactive, thinking as a parent, you know, you're a parent if you're a responsible parent, if you have the resources. Before the baby gets here, you get a carriage and a baby seat and a few thousand diapers and, you know, some place for the baby to sleep. And we used to call them cheesecloth, the little thing you put on your shoulder that the baby throws up on after you. Anyways, so you have that stuff. And I think the same is true. We've used the term bibliotherapy here on the show a lot. And there are things that are going to happen to every kid. They're going to be bullied, or they're going to see it happening. They're going to hear somebody be racist or be anti-Semitic or anti-Muslim. But they're going to hear that kind of hate somewhere in their life, or it will be directed at them. And they're going to have a loss, so they're going to move, or one of their friends are going to move. So if we have these resources in our homes, and we read the stories, it's just stories, and the kid knows that book is there in the library, the family library, the most important place in the home. They know that it's there. When the situation happens, they're going to remember that, and they're going to grab that book, and they're going to say, "Hey, Mom, can we read this again?"
Exactly. Yeah. I often leave books laying around. You know, we keep our books kind of on the coffee table, the ones in heavy demand, but sometimes I'll add one in if I think like it's a topic that's going to come up. And sometimes my daughter, especially, like, oh, let's read this, and I'll usually, okay, that's good. That's, you know, that she's feeling that right now. And other times I'll leave one and it's ignored. And so then we just return it to the library or, put it back on the shelf for a while. But I think it's important to kind of try to anticipate the things that are going to come up, because it just gives you're more prepared as a parent to have kind of conversations that might be more challenging, and your kid's more prepared because they have some examples.
Right. Yeah. And working through a challenging situation in your mind, thinking about how a character in a book is working through that situation and imagining themselves, imagining what could be done differently, that's a whole lot easier and less scary than all of a sudden now you have to do it for real. And so that's one of the advantages of reading with our kids. In addition to helping them read and develop vocabulary, it's a way for them to kind of visualize themselves in all different situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And one of the things I love is, being a social worker, I started life as I started my professional life as a social worker. And one of the biggest parts of being a social worker is being prepared, knowing what resources are out there when tragedy happens so that you're not in panic mode, like, oh my goodness, this just happened. I need to run around like crazy while I'm also trying to stop the bleeding over here. I need to go and find where everything is. As a social worker, you know that you bring that to the families that are in crisis. And I think as parents, we need to kind of think like social workers. We need to look ahead and say, what might happen? I know there's a lot of parents out there who are, already have the bubble wrap around their kids and they're like, nothing's going to happen to my kid. Well, that bubble wrap doesn't work so well.
Well, there's a lot beyond our control,
right.
And that's life. So being prepared as much as you can, I think is really important, and doing it in a fun way, like if your kid likes books, then it's really easy to use books, but maybe there's like, a stuffed animal or a character that they also relate to, and you can tell a story with it. You have to kind of match what you're doing to the specific needs of your child. But I think it's just really important to have those kind of tools, and I see books as a huge tool.
Yeah. So let's get back specifically to Will Jacks Be Home for Thanksgiving? What are some of the messages that your daughter heard when you first read this story with her?
Well, the first thing that she said when I read it, she's like, well, that's what happened to my brother, isn't it? It was like right away. She saw our situation mirrored in the story. And I think that was just so comforting to her at the time because, she was 4 at the time and this was new. This was very, very new. So that was one big thing that was very helpful. And then I think, I wanted to normalize, in a kid world, brain tumor is just a name that you call something. It's just, that's the label. And I wanted to normalize that in every kid's world. That it doesn't, us as adults, we have a lot more associations and a lot more maybe fears and things connected to that word. We worry, we think of all the what ifs. But kids don't really think it that way. So I really just want to say, like, this is what it is, and to take all that fear and all that other stuff out of the picture. Because I think as much as possible, a lot of this experience for me has been about living in the moment. And I want to pass that on to my kids and my readers, that like all you have that you can control is your experience in the moment, and, so to just really hear the word, okay, it's simplifying, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So important. I imagine at this time we've been speaking now for about 12 minutes or so, and I know there are people out there thinking, how's Jax?
Yes. Well, it's a happy story. He is a very happy, healthy 4, almost 5-year-old. He had what he went through was extraordinary, but he came out with flying colors, and I'm really filled with a lot of gratitude for both where we are, based in Massachusetts. We have an incredible medical system, and I can 100% say that his situation might not be what it was if it were not for the care he got here. And so for that, I'm very grateful. And he really, He goes to preschool. He has a very kind of normal little kid life. And when he was sick and in the hospital for my husband and I, that was one thing that we committed to each other. Like, we're going to, do everything we can, but our goal for him is to have the most normal life that he can, and for as long as that is. And that's really what we've tried to do for him.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm so grateful that Jax is bouncing around. Is he zooming in preschool, or does he actually get to see human beings in person?
Oh, it's a real preschool at the moment. Yes. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Hey, talk a little, we kind of touched on it earlier on. This is our Thanksgiving episode. I think that a book like Will Jax Be Home for Thanksgiving is a great way, no matter where your family is, if they're dealing with a potential loss or a great illness, or if it's just Thanksgiving and it's just another normal Thanksgiving. Well, it's not a normal Thanksgiving this year. We've said it every year. We have the studio here is our biggest space, and we tear all the microphones and the banners down, and we bring down the table, and we have 30 people. And there are some years there's 6 different languages being spoken at our table. And my son, just reminded me the other day that, Pops, what are you going to do? It's just you and Mom for Thanksgiving this year. But I'm grateful that we have each other. How can we use a book like this at any time of year to talk to our kids about gratitude and living gratefully?
Yeah, I think gratitude is so important all the time. I've always kind of tried to talk to my kids, before we go to sleep, let's think of a few things that we're grateful for, just really generally, just to get their minds thinking that way. But I think when we don't slow down, it's very easy to forget how much there is to be grateful for. And I think Thanksgiving is a wonderful opportunity to do that, because it's a day really set aside for gratitude and being thankful. So I think to take the moment, annually is great, and then to build it in as a routine is also super important if you can. And when you start to put your mind toward the things you're grateful for, all of those things seem to expand, right? You can keep going and going and going. And when you put your mind toward the things that maybe you're not as grateful for, those things expand. So it's just better to kind of put that focus where you want it to be, where on the expansive gratitude things. And no matter what the situation is, no matter how dark it is or difficult, there's always something to be grateful for. There's always a spark of light, even in the darkest times. And my son was actually diagnosed. It was the week before Thanksgiving. So we had gone to the hospital and gotten his scan that said he had the brain tumor on it was a Tuesday. He was admitted to the hospital, and then they sent us home for the weekend for Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. And they were like, go home, be together with your family before Thanksgiving, and then come back on Monday for surgery. But that was a dark, hard time, but there was still so much to be grateful and joyful for that we could be together, that we had this time, that we could go home, that we didn't have to stay in the hospital. And so even in these times of real struggle, there's always a light. There's always something to find, to focus on for gratitude.
I really have to take my hat off to you. And thankfully our kids were blessed with great health, but there was a 2-day period when my son was maybe 18 months old where he had this persistent cough, and we took him in and he got the chest x-ray, and the technician read it and called before we left the area, said, you need to speak to a cardiologist immediately. Your son has an enlarged heart. He may not make it till the end of the week. And I flipped out and was there. And then they're like, well, he can see you next month. Hey, the kid's going to be dead. And then they called me the next day and said, never mind, we made a mistake. And, I was really grateful, but you were able to deal with this with a lot more grace and calm sanity than I was able to. So, I really do tip my hat off to you. But I think that your message it's so important for us to reflect on at this time, because there are a lot of struggles. We're going through this once, hopefully in a lifetime pandemic situation, worldwide situation. And, what's it going to be like when the pandemic hopefully is gone in months or a year? What's life going to be like? Is it going to return? So there's a lot of unknowns, but there's still so many things that we can be grateful for. We can be grateful for our family, that we are alive right now, that we get to sit down and to reflect and to have Thanksgiving, whether it's with 30 people or with just the most important person in your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I understand that proceeds from sales of this book are going to a specific cause.
Yeah, so all of the profit, from the book goes to a nonprofit organization that my husband and I started, I guess about a little over a year ago now, when our son was diagnosed. It's called the Ependymoma Research Foundation, and we're a small volunteer-run nonprofit that all of our goal is to fund research to find a cure for the type of cancer that he has. It's called an ependymoma, so that's why the name. So yeah, all of the book sales go directly to support that research, and all money that comes into the organization goes directly to research. My husband and I personally pay for all the other kind of administrative costs, so that we're really focusing on the goal so that we can get a solution within our lifetime. Because I think the one hopeful thing, and that I'm grateful to for this type of disease, is that it really can be cured. And if there's energy and effort and money put toward it, we will find a cure. And so I think that's really a hopeful thing, because I wouldn't say that about all things, but I do think it's with some effort, I think it will really make a difference for many kids.
Yeah. And maybe that's something that we should be most grateful for, is hope.
Yes.
In a minute, I'm going to ask you to let us know where we can go to find out more about you and your book and your foundation. But first, I'm just curious, you wrote the book for your daughter. You're a social worker. I imagine you never planned on being a children's author, but now that the book is out there and folks are digging it and responding to it, are there going to be more children's books coming from Samarrah Clayman?
Definitely. I actually have always been, like a writer, both kind of in my career, maybe not always children's books, but always something. So it's kind of a natural growth. So I do have another children's book that just came out. It's a yoga book. It's called Downward Doggy. And it's kind of a fun, like preschool age, follow along yoga led by a very fun dog. And then I have some nonfiction picture books that I'm working on as well right now.
Excellent. So first, where can folks go to learn more about your books?
Yeah, so the best place is probably my personal website. It's samarrahclayman.com, so just my name. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to find more about the foundation, it's called the Ependymoma Research Foundation, and I know that's a mouthful. Mm-hmm. So we also have a URL, website, whatever. It's braintumorwarrior.org, just because it's easier to spell. So.
Much easier to spell, much easier to remember. And I think it's hopeful too. It's like, hey, this is a challenge, but we're gonna go out there, and as we might say in Boston, we're gonna kick butt.
Exactly.
Yeah. We've had a really fun time celebrating Thanksgiving, celebrating family, celebrating hope with our guest, Samarrah Clayman. Be sure to check out her book, Will Jax Be Home for Thanksgiving? Samarrah, thanks so much for being part of the show.
Thank you. My pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast as we kick off our celebration of graphic novels and comic strip. Our guest will be John Gallagher, the author and illustrator of Max Meow, Cat Crusader. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We would like to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Samarrah Clayman. Be sure to check out Will Jax Be Home for Thanksgiving. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you so very much for all that you're doing for your kids, teaching them and helping them through this very, very different and difficult Thanksgiving. Thank you for helping us all stay safe by wearing a mask and staying socially safe distance apart from each other. And most of all, thank you so much for reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.